What's up, good people? It's your boy, Dr. Leroy
Recording in progress.
Kinsey Jr. And it's another episode. Yeah, I think it's echo. And welcome to another episode of the Authors Showcase. The Authors Showcase brought to you by JNF Enterprises and the National Black Community Newspaper. And we want to thank y'all for tuning in. I'm going to see if I can get rid of that echo, because for some reason we are echoing right now. So make sure that we are good. Let me see. What is going on? What is going on here? So sorry. So around here somewhere. Should have left it up there. So let's see. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. We appreciate you all coming in. We have another great conversation for you all, and it's gonna be just like just like all of the other ones. We're bringing you some of our, I call them some of our countries, some of our nations' best writers, best, I say, authors, just folks that are just so awesome in what they do. Yeah. Let me ask you, Crystal, is that you? Do you have another device on or something? Can you hear me?
No, I just got this on my computer.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Yeah, well, I'm hearing an echo though. I think it's gone now though. Yeah. Yeah, so I want to make sure that because I'm hearing an echo, but I thought it was on my end, but it doesn't look like it. So I didn't know if you had another device going or not. I didn't know if you had another device. Let me see if I can. Let me hear the echo really bad. That's okay. So let me see. Okay. So, but you hear me okay? So, let me see. Okay. So, but you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, because you're frozen now. So I want to make sure we got you straight. Okay. So, but I want to introduce everyone to, for those that may not know her, but for those that do, you are certainly, you already know who she is, but she's author Crystal Ann Mitchell. And we're just going to have a great conversation about who she is, what she does, and we're going to get into talking about this great book that she has out, and then also all of the other things that make our author so absolutely phenomenal. So, Crystal, I want you, if you can, we'll start off just by having you introduce yourself to everyone. Tell me a little bit about who Crystal Ann Mitchell is, and then I want you to give them something that everybody might not know about you. Just a little teaser about, just a fun fact about yourself, if you can.
Okay, my name is Crystal Ann Mitchell. I'm here in Lexington, Kentucky. I became an author about almost 2 years ago. So I became an author during the pandemic. I made my dream come true during the pandemic. Okay. And I'm a nurse aide. I've been a nurse aide for about 7 years. And about 6 years ago, 7 years, well, 5 years ago, that's when people just noticed that I could write. Nobody really knew that I had this gift, so I hid it from my friends and family.
Now, okay, let me ask you. Now, why did you want to hide it from your friends and why did you want to hide this gift from your friends and family?
Well, I always wanted to become author since I was a child, and I used to fantasize about becoming this author. I used to practice my signature throughout life, and it was just going throughout life, it just got pushed to the back of my mind, and I never knew of any authors, to actually see face to face. So the only people that actually really knew was my teachers. And so I don't know. I just kept it a secret, I don't know.
Well, do me a favor because I'm getting you're breaking up in and out. What I'm want to have you do if you can, yeah, I'm gonna have you go out and then if you can come back in and we'll see if that clears up your Wi-Fi because you're frozen right now. Okay, so let's see if that'll work for you. Okay. All right, so she's going to be back in a second. I'm going to just give just a little bit of information about Crystal. I know that her the title of her book actually is is the beginnings of her story. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about what made her want to write this particular book, how she got into writing from the beginning, and then we'll talk a little about how we'll have a conversation just about the characters in her book, and then how she goes about doing the writing in her, how she went about her writing process that she had. Because as authors, hopefully those that are listening and that those that will listen, you'll understand and know the importance of how to or putting a process in order for you to be able to accomplish of writing the book. So she is back. Let's see if that's. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, that's a lot better. Cool.
Okay.
So I want you to start off. Just start, if you can. Let's start with having you tell the folks just a little bit about who Crystal Ann Mitchell is, and then we'll have you talk about what got you started writing. I know you said you kept it from your family and friends, but I want you to talk about what got you started writing. Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm from Lexington, Kentucky. I'm a nurse aide. Of 17 years, I kept my gift. I hid it from my friends and family. And going throughout life, it just got pushed in the back of my mind. And so I tend to have dreams to come true. So I had dreamed my brother's death years before it had happened.
Oh, wow.
And so by the end of that year, it was on my heart, in my mind to write. And I thought it was my own self telling my own self to write. And so I made up every excuse of why I couldn't write. I'm getting old. I don't know what to write about. And then that year marking his death, it was just on my heart very heavily all day, every day. And I could not shake this feeling. And so I asked God, if you want me to write, give me a sign and I'm going to write. And he ended up giving me my sign. So that's how and why I became an author. So this book I got to dedicate it to my brother.
Oh, I like that. I like that. I like that. Because I remember when I first started writing, I was writing in college and I wrote poetry. And it was just me just writing to kind of get some things out of my head and get stuff out there, and it came out in the form of poetry. But so, some time after that, I showed, just showing people, just showing some friends and stuff like that, my writings, and they were like, "Well, you should put this in a book." And I'm like, "No, I ain't know nothing about writing no book." I'm like, and I did the same thing that you did. I said, Lord, I said, if this is what you want me to do, I said, you're gonna have to show me how to do this. I said, and because I didn't at the time, I didn't think that I had enough poems to be able to put into a book, you know. So I'm like,
Right.
okay. But here's the crazy thing about it, Crystal. When I as I started when I did that and I started to write, I found that I had more to say. And I was like, wow,
Yes.
okay, this is crazy. So I was like, okay. So started looking more into, okay, how do I do this writing? You know, what do I need to do? How do I go about doing it and all of that stuff? And so I get that with what you say when you say that, you know, you're like, okay, Lord, how do I do this? And allowing him to guide you through
Right.
writing the book, and especially writing about something that's traumatic. And you can tell a little bit about, because you said it's based off of your brother, and we'll talk a little bit about the book. But before we do that, I want you to, if you can, if you had one word to describe your writing and your writing style, what would that be?
I would have to say multi. I would use the word multi because I always say that my book is inspirational, painful inspirational, because I don't want to take away from God, you know. I don't want to take away from him. And, you know, a lot of people will think of churchy. So that's why I put the painful in front of it, because I think a lot of people ran away, you know, they don't want to be, you know. So I put the painful in front of it. But in reality, you have your romance, you have your drama, you have your suspense. So it's a lot of genre wrapped inside of one book, but I want to keep it, for God of saying inspirational, because it is to help others, you know. Yeah, so it's a lot wrapped in one.
Now, let me ask you this, and we'll talk a little bit more about your writing style and everything like that, or what you write. And you mentioned about having the different genres kind of wrapped up into the book. Was that something that you did intentionally when you were writing, that you knew it was going to encompass the gumbo of novels, of books and stuff like that?
I didn't even know, I guess God, you know, he was guiding me. So I didn't even know, but I just wanted the readers to want to keep going. So I kept leaving them some to want to go to the next chapter. So I made sure that I did do that. But yeah, I didn't think that it was going to end up the way that it was.
Gotcha. I like that. And I've always said too, that, and I've had those authors like you that write novels or fiction, that you all talk about how the characters take on a personality of their own. They become these real people, so to speak, as you're writing the story, because the story becomes them and it becomes laid out. But is that what happened to you as well?
Well, it's based on truth, so the characters are really real life people. So I'm trying to make it be as much as them as possible. So yeah, but I've written a third book that I'm working on now,
Okay.
and the characters, I really don't know that. I don't even know how they're gonna really turn out. So I freestyle. It ain't like you know. So I'm learning as I'm going. I'm supposed to.
Absolutely. Now, you talked about and you mentioned this. You said that that your book this book is dedicated to your brother. Um, was it difficult for you to write this story, and what made you? What was that thing that said, you know what, I want to honor him, or I want to write about him in the story? What was that thing that made you say you wanted to do that?
Well, it was very painful writing it, and it was also therapeutic. So when I asked God, you know, I knew that he was part of the story, because, you know, he started giving me these dreams. I started having premonition dreams like 9 years ago. So these dreams was coming out of nowhere, and a part of me was mad and angry at God, because, you know, I felt like maybe I was to stop it, and then I'm like I couldn't stop it. So it was just like always wondering why. And so I think he was just getting me prepared. So it's mainly as we leading into, so I'm introducing the world to him as I'm going through my journey in life as well. So I just want the world to get a feel of what type of, person he was and stuff like that. Yeah,
Absolutely.
so
And that's well, that's wonderful. Now, I want you, if you can, can you tell the audience just a little bit about the book? Give them an overview of what the book is about, even though it's about your brother. But what's the
yeah.
story?
Well, this book is basically the ingredients of all the things that I had to go through for me to become who I am to become. So I'm speaking on all this pain that I had to endure, and at the time I'm not knowing of why I had to go through these things,
Mm-hmm.
and it was God actually helping to prepare me, which I did not understand until I started writing. So you got your betrayal in this book, you have your sex in this book, you got your drama, your romance, and so starting off, it's just all these bad things that I had to go through. Basically, God's going to use your enemies as your footstool. So it's helping others to understand that no matter how hard life gets, is to always have faith in God.
Mm-hmm.
And what don't kill you make you stronger, and that there's purpose in that pain.
And I like that. I have one of my business associates. He that's kind of like his tagline that he used. What doesn't kill you, grows you, and being determined through the pain and what we go through, those obstacles that we go through. Now you said you kept your writing a secret, right, from your
Yes.
family. Now, was it because of what you were writing about, and they might not like what you had to say, or was it you just didn't want them to know about you have writing altogether?
No, like through life, I would write. I
Okay,
used to write poems as a child,
okay,
and my teachers, they would like reading my. I think I was a little too deep in school because they'd be like, "Is her thing okay?" Because and I'm like, "Okay, maybe I don't need to be." And so after my brother died, and God gave me my assignment, I was like, I'm about to write. And everybody's like, okay, they just like, okay. And they supported me, and it wasn't until they got the book is when they was like, you can really write, and they read on other books. Yeah, so it wasn't until after he died is when I was like, I'm about to be an author. I'm about to become an author.
mhm. So how have people received your book so far? Have you gotten any kind of feedback as far as like as far as the book is concerned?
Yes, I have people tell me and others, my sister and stuff, and family and friends that they've read the book more than once.
Mm-hmm.
That they waiting on the second book because I cut the
Uh,
book off.
mhm.
I want to self publish my second one, so I got a publisher for my first. And so I wanted to cut it off because I felt like I couldn't grab the audience that I needed. So I felt as if I needed a publisher, but I didn't want to give them my whole life story. So
Uh-huh.
I cut that off, and which I've already written it
Mhm.
as my publishers was working on my book. So they waiting for the second book. I had a woman ride past my house telling me she's waiting on the second book. So yeah, yeah. So now they rushing me.
But
Yeah, but that it has helped them.
mhm, mhm.
Some said that they've cried, yeah, because they seen themselves in these characters
Wow,
as
wow.
well.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I've said about being an author, and whether it's fiction or even nonfiction, but especially when you go into fiction, I think and I'll ask you this: what makes a fiction writer successful? I think one of the things that you can do to be successful is when the reader can relate to one of the characters. If there's several characters in it, if they can relate to one of the characters, almost like if you think of the movie like The Brothers, or if you think of the movie Love Jones, if you think of the movie where there's kept multiple characters, but you can see somebody or you in one of those characters. The same way with this. When I think about reading, I know when I read a book that's fiction, that's what I look to see how, you know, what the author is kind of saying, what that character kind of acts like, and if I can, you know, if I can visualize
Right.
it, and also if I can relate to that particular character. And is that what you do, where in your writing, where you want the reader, what do you want the reader to come away with from the book?
To always have faith in God and to never give up, and that there's purpose in that pain. I want them to know, because it's so, you got two options. You can either let it make you or break you.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
so you know, and your pain and suffering is always for someone else. So it's always good to hear of people that had it worse than you, because you can be like, okay, well, they went through that. I know that I can overcome what I'm going through. You know, yeah. So it's just, you know, motivation.
mhm, mhm. And I tell people that all the time. Even my clients, when some of them are writing their own story, I said, your story has nothing to do with you. I said,
Right,
it's for those individuals that will encounter you, or also say this too, that you're giving someone else the freedom to live their life, because a lot of people, and I've heard so many of my clients say this, that they've had people come up to them, or I've had people tell me this. They said, "Wow, I think I thought I was the only one who was going through this,
right,
you know."
right,
And so many of us, and what I've come to realize since being a writer, we find out that we're not the only ones, that there are so
right,
many people that are going through the same things that you're writing about. And when they're able to relate to it, or when they're able to read about it, you give them an understanding, and you show them, this is, hey, I went through it, but you can make it through this. If I can get through this, or if I can deal with this, this is, you know, then you can as well too. And I've seen it, and it's just, it's powerful. It's really powerful
yes,
to have people to come to that understanding. So yeah. So now you did this in a, I guess it's not, it's a fictional, but you said it's based on the true story. So
yes.
how did you how did you how did you find when you were writing this, because it was true events and stuff like that? How did you go about, what was, if I can ask you, what was your writing process to go through writing this? Because you said, you know, you were emotionally going through it, and I know that when you're writing something that's personal, it takes you back to that place, takes you back to all of those emotions and everything like that. So how
Yes.
did you navigate through that? How did you deal with having to do that and go through all of that?
Well, I wrote it in 7 months. I
Wow.
wrote it in 7 months, and I made up a psychologist in there. So he's made up, but everything that I'm telling him are truthful things. Because I didn't want it to seem as if, you know, make this just a sad story, you know, just hearing sad things. So I wanted the readers to experience like romance, you know,
Right.
just giving them something to look forward to each session. But
Okay.
I also needed him because I needed him to help me to go back into time. So that is how I was able to, you know, live out these moments.
Okay.
So it would be times where I would cry. So I got to cry out things that I had kept in. So I got to accept the things that happened, you know, but I written it in 7 months, and It was very therapeutic. Although at the time I was like, oh my God, I gotta tell everybody,
Yeah, and
I wanted to keep it but when your daddy tell you what to do, you can't be disobedient, you got to obey what daddy God say. So I had to do that, and it was very therapeutic, and I'm glad that I did follow
and,
his instructions.
and the thing is when we're dealing with something that's traumatic, it's like that, and you putting it out, it is therapeutic, but it's also a way for the body to release. Because I've always said this: the body has to release toxic. It's gonna release emotions either way, whether it's positive or negative. The body just has that's how God created us to be. We can't if we don't, then what we wind up doing is damaging ourselves on the inside. It can
Yes,
mess with your organs. It can mess with your mind. It can mess with all of those different functions that are you if we don't let it. Um, so it was healthy. I know it might not seem like it was at the time that it was healthy, but in a way
yes,
that is healthy. And I love the fact that you did it the way that you said you wrote it. So each chapter is a session that the character
yes,
goes to the. Oh,
yes.
that's crazy. Oh, I like that. I like that.
Hey, I'm telling you.
Okay,
I got
okay.
done with
I
them.
see what
I
you're
was
doing.
like,
I see what
oh, it was okay.
it's taking people to the doctor without taking them to the doctor. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yes, 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 yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So if somebody tells you that you need therapy, you can go buy Crystal's book and be like, yeah, I went and saw a doctor. See, this is what I did. I went to the doctor and I went to her session. But that's great. I love that. And I'm trying to think of. I don't think that there's been that I can recall. There might be books out there that was written like that, where it was written a true story that was written in the form of a doctor assisting someone to go through what they were going through. So
Right.
that's definitely that kind of got a movie written over it. Like
Hey,
man,
that's the plan. That's the vision right there, Dr. Leroy. That's the
I
vision.
like it. I like it. That got some elements to it right there,
Hey,
right?
and that is another. If anybody go back to my first few interviews, I say that I thought about Hollywood, and Hollywood's gonna make them want to fall in love. So that's the reason that. So
Okay,
yeah, I was thinking more.
gotcha.
But you gotta go and dream it on big if you're gonna dream it out. You just
Definitely.
got to big.
And we're not gonna say Hollywood. We're gonna say Tyler Perry. We're gonna put that
Well,
out there.
yeah, that too. Yeah, I'm waiting on him, Dr. Leroy.
Yeah, he got the studio down in Atlanta. So
I'm telling you,
and
yes,
listen,
yes.
Kentucky ain't but a hop, skip, and a jump right over to New Jersey. So
It really is. It really, really
but that sounds really that really does. And I'm being genuine. I'm being serious about that because that's
well,
that's
thank you.
that's a different narrative, and it's a different perspective to be able to write from. Now, is the main character the doctor, or is it the patient
Yeah, the patient, and that's Megan Guy, which that's me.
okay.
I'm called Megan Gander, and so yeah, but it's more of him as well, as I'm going. So yeah, it is good, Dr. Leroy. I can't even fake the funk, and I say it with a very humble heart.
I feel you. And if nobody else feels that it's good, you should feel that way because
Yeah,
how's anybody else gonna feel that way if you don't feel that way? You're
it
like, yeah, it's,
right.
it's all right. It's all right. No, you need to read this book right here. I love it. But that's what it's about. Now let me ask you this: How did you? Well, I'm gonna ask you this. Um, what does the title, "The Beginnings of Her Story," mean to you? And then how did you come up with the title?
Well, it means the beginning of her story means a lot to me because it's I'm telling the world how it all started,
Okay, okay,
you know. And it's crazy that I read the book, like I said, in 7 months, and I had to send it off. Well, I wrote it down first, and then I had to type it.
okay.
And so from now on, I just type because that was just extra. So I was about to send it out to some publishers, and I was telling my daughter, I was like, "Well, I don't even have a title for the
Oh,
book.
okay.
You know, I need a title." And she was like, "Well, how about the beginning of her story?" So my daughter had came up with the title. She had came up with the title. So the book is I got my blindfold and my hand out. So that's of saying that I'm walking by faith and not by sight. So I got my hand out to God.
I
Yeah,
love it.
because yeah.
And I love it. So that's really nice. And let me now you talked now you mentioned this um about the going with a publisher. Was it hard for you to decide whether to, I don't call it self-publish, I call it being an entrepreneur versus being going to a traditional publishing company? Did you weigh those two? What made you go with the publisher versus the author, being an entrepreneur with that book?
Well, I had someone tell me that I should just do it on my own, but I was just scared that I couldn't grab the audience.
Okay.
And so I just picked 5 publishers, and I wasn't even expecting for anybody to really, pick me because you think about all these successful authors that been rejected. So I'm expected to be rejected so many
Okay.
times. So, and a part of me, really wanted to because I wasn't really ready to give the world, share to the world my story. And when I sent it out for a day or two later, it was a publisher that was like, we love your story. We'd love to bring it to print. And then I ran away from them because I was like, how dare y'all? And so I ran away from them and they kept emailing me and calling me. And I even had my daughter answer. It was like, tell your mom, could she please call us. And I ended up, calling them back.
Well,
And yeah, so
what made you call them back? What was the decision? What was the decision to call
because
them?
that meant I was running from God, and it was a story that I have to give out, But I'm thinking that I'm gonna have all these things to stop me. But he was like, yeah. And then after that, I sent it out to like 5, and then like a few months down, it was another publisher that had reached out to me, but I was already with someone.
Someone. Okay. Now talk about that. Can you talk a little bit about that process of being with a publisher? How has that been for you? How was that with you, and being able to assist you to get you where you wanted to be as far as an author?
It was really good. Because like I said, as they was working on that, I was working on my second part of the book.
Okay.
So it actually took 2 years going back and forth, and I was like really not wanting to get this book out. So I got to get like 2 other editors to even look, I guess, to like prolong the process. And my family was like, if you do not turn that book in and just and so yeah, it took 2 years going back and forth. And me as an author, I don't know if others is like this, but as I was writing, I'm looking at it as I'm writing it.
Okay.
So it's playing in my mind first.
Okay.
And then with the 2 years, I would have to have my daughter read it. It's like I need to hear it as it's flowing. I don't know if that sounds weird or whatnot, but I got to listen to the flow
Right.
of the wording for
Uh-huh.
me to get how I would want it. So yeah, it took 2 years back and forth,
Okay.
the proofreading and stuff.
Now, how did you said you had your daughter read it? How did she receive that story, knowing it was about her, knowing it was about her uncle?
Yeah, I think that because I I think with her, she's not really too big on reading. And it is crazy because I'm like, how you not like to really read? And I'm the author. But she even said that it's so interesting. And she don't say that about too many books, you know. But I think with her reading it as she's listening to my pain, you know, I think a part of it was just like, but she would see some of it, but she's now actually knowing more. I think kind of made her a little sad, but happy at the same time too that I'm making my dream come true. You know, yeah.
That's cool.
But she was tired. I know she was tired too of being like, "Hey, woman, go on and turn that book."
Absolutely. Like, Mama, if you don't go and be gone now, no, Mama. Mama, no, Mama, no. I want you to, if you can you give the viewing audience, can you give them like your 3 steps to how to building a fictional character or characters in a book? How will you? Now I know yours is the first book is about is about your brother. Now are the other 2 the other books that you're working on, are they still based on the true story, or are they totally
the second one would be based on with the first book. It'll be a continuation with the first book, but the third book that I'm working on, that's just fiction.
Okay. Now how did you go about building? Now, what's is there a difference between the building of the character that you know is based off of a true life, which might not be as difficult as the one that the third book where you say that one's a totally made up character that you're developing? Is there a difference in those? Can you talk about the 3 or the ways in which you went about building or go about building those characters?
They slightly different because like I said, the first 2 books, they are actually based on real people, and I just make it as them as much as possible. And the third book, it's just me making it up, but it's like I'm just going with the flow. I just freestyle it, so I'm just the shop as well. Of how, that's a good question, but I'm lost. I don't even know. I wouldn't even be able to explain the book because just how my mind, I guess, working. I thought everybody's minds was like that, but like writer's block, I didn't even know I had to. Oh Lord, I had to look that word up because I didn't even know what it was. My mind just flows. And so. Yeah, I just go with the wind. So I couldn't even really give them no advice on that.
Let me ask you this: What has writing this first book, and then you're still in the process of writing the third book, what has it taught you about you?
It has taught me that that I've always had it in me. That I've always had it in me. And I was going to go back to school for writing. I was like, well, maybe I should go to school for writing. But then it made me think, like, how can somebody teach me something that I already know? I just forget. And I say all this humbly, like, I'm just my own person because when I wrote my book, I made sure my publishers, the editors, they did not change how I talked. Because I'm not trying to portray myself as this perfect person because it's the world, I'm not perfect. And I don't want to act like I talk that way, so we ain't about to change nothing. So I think I'm just my own self. And I believe when you have a gift, that's absolutely something that you don't have to learn. It just comes naturally, because 2nd, 3rd grade, I had it in my heart, It just took for me to get older, for me to actually work out my vision, my purpose. So yeah, I think it just basically going back to the question that I've just had it in me, and as I'm writing, though, I'm getting much better, Yeah, so.
And that's the thing, as writers, as authors, we should always be honing our craft. We should always be learning how we can do it better. Because I know from my first book to my last book, I'm like, I look at my first book like, oh, it's like, oh wow, really? I wrote that. I'm like, oh wow, okay. That's what we do. But you learn so. To me, you learn so much.
Yes,
You become better at what it is
yes,
that you do. And even in like with those of you that do the fiction writing, even in the character development, and like you said, the creativity is there. Is always going to be there because you can create as you
yes,
need it. But how to craft that creativity and say, hey, you can take a character that has you just like, okay, where in the world did that come from? How did somebody think of think of that?
right,
Is just absolutely great. And you said something that I want to pick up too that I really want the authors that are listening to understand. You talked about you didn't want the publisher to take away your voice. You didn't want them to make it sound like you were somebody else, and that's key. Because I'm telling y'all, if you are an author, an aspiring author, and you're looking to go the whether it's the traditional publishing route, or even if you work with a small publisher, you may work with a smaller publisher, not necessarily a mainstream publisher, but you're working with a small publisher. You should not allow them to tell you who you are or your voice. Now,
right,
yes, they're going to give you suggestions as they should because they want to make sure that it's going to be the best project and the best piece of work that you can put out there. But at the end of the day, like you were saying, Crystal, it should not take away from your voice and who you are. Be like,
right.
no, that if people and the folks that know you, they know you. Be like, that ain't how Crystal today.
You know
That ain't how
what?
she. So I know.
You know what? Damn.
They be like, no, they be like, take this back, Crystal. Give my money back. That type of deal. So you certainly want to make sure that you keep your authenticity. There's gonna be some tweaks and there's gonna be some changes, and of course the grammar and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that voice, when the reader's reading your book, it is your voice, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. It must be your voice. It's got to be what
Right,
it is that you want to say. So I really think that was key, and I'm glad that you said that, and glad that the publishers that you went with allowed you to do that, because a
yeah,
lot of people they feel as if, well, and singers I think get caught up in this too. They're so hungry to get a deal, so hungry to make money, that they'll
right,
say, whatever you want me to do, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. But no, you have to be authentic to yourself. You have to be authentic to
right.
the audience that you're writing for. So I love that you said that. Let me ask you this: what was the most difficult part of writing the book?
The most difficult part would have to be reliving these painful memories.
Mm.
Yeah, it would have to be reliving it because
Right.
there was stuff that I absolutely did not want to relive, things that I blocked out of my mind.
Mm.
And it's like, oh, I gotta talk about this too. Yeah, so yeah, that was the most painful part,
Uh,
difficult.
if I can ask you, how were you able to deal with those difficult parts when you had to go back in your mind? How were you able to deal with them?
I got to cry. I got to actually break down and cry.
Okay.
And yeah, I got that cry out that I kept in, that I didn't let out. And it was a cry that was like a relief
Hmm.
of saying, okay, it happened and it's okay.
Wow.
And it took a lot of weight off my shoulders as
Okay.
well.
Okay.
Yeah,
But that's good. That's a good thing.
yeah,
And I love to see that, and I love to see this. And I always say this: it's what my mother calls the other side of the fence. When we get through those obstacles, those tough times, on the other side of it is not, like you said, it's what God has for you on the other
yeah,
side of that story. So
yes,
that's a phenomenal thing. That's a great thing, to be able to do that, and to see that happen. And I know. that your brother's smiling down on you. You're like, yeah, she did it. She did that. She did that thing. Absolutely. So that's really good. So I want you to tell the people just a little bit about what you got coming up, what you got next. I know you mentioned the little book. Can you give them a little bit of what those? I know you said the one is a continuation, but tell us a little bit about where that goes with that, and then the other that you have coming up.
Yeah, well, the second book would be leading into the death of my brother, of the premonitions and everything. Because, I don't think the world was ready for all that in one book as well. So I need to let them know as much how sane I really am, and getting a feel of who I am as well before we go into these things. Because a lot of people don't want to acknowledge that people have this gift of dreams. And the third book and then with the second one of me having to relive the part of my brother's actual death, so that's something I think I'm trying to hold off on. And then the third book, I'm thinking about doing a pen name with that, so I don't want to tell y'all too much about that book, but I'm like on chapter like 24, but it's good. I am amazed.
That's awesome. I love it.
But I'm gonna be working on the audio book for those that don't know how to read and don't want to read. I gotta try to reach them as well. So I want to make it where people have different people to talk as the other characters have the music in the background. Something that'll catch their attention as well. Yeah.
And I like that because I tell my clients too this that having because I know that you have your books, and we'll talk about this in a second, where people can purchase the books and stuff like that. But I think it's also you have to understand in this 21st century way of business and doing things, especially when it comes to us authors and publishing, that there are different ways to reach your target audience. There's some that are, that are the, like you said, they are the audio crew, the audio people that, hey, they love to listen to it versus turning the pages. I'm that.
Right.
I love to turn the pages. I like to have.
Yes, me too.
I need to say, ooh, let me see what I have this next session. That's me. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, man, this is good. And I lied to you, Netflix. I just started listening to audiobooks because my goal is, let me tell you why. My goal this year, and I've given everybody this challenge. They said, and I heard this from a brother that I was listening to on YouTube. He said, if you read 20 pages a day, you will in a year you will have read an average of 30 books, right? So I'm like, okay, all right, I want to read 30 books this year, because the average person only reads one book a year.
Right.
A year. So I was like, well, cool. I want to read 30 books a year, and I started thinking to myself, well, does that include audiobooks too? So, so there were a couple of books that I said, okay, it was kind of easier to listen to them on audiobooks versus physically reading them and turning the pages. So I was like, okay, because the audiobooks, they can range. The longest one I think was like 10, 11 hours. So you can break it up. You can break it up into when you listen to it and everything like that. But to me, the audiobooks, I'm not at tune with it. Where if I have a book that I'm reading, I can take my time, and most of them mine, so I can highlight them. I can highlight the audio book. I can highlight the audio book.
Yes.
Audio book. So so some of them I do, some of them I will. So it's important that we have those tools in our toolbox, just like when it comes to where your book is available. And I want you to tell people where your books are available. And that's important too, because it doesn't have to be, and I'll let you do that first and then I'll talk about that. So how can people find you? Where can people connect with you? And then how can they purchase the books your books?
Okay, well, you could connect with me on Twitter at Crystal 112184. Instagram, Crystal_and_Mitchell. And then you can find me on Facebook. I have an author's page, Crystal and Mitchell. And yeah. And then my books, you can Google me. I have all these places. Dorrance Publishing is my publishers. Walmart, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Goodreads, and there's others as well. I'm up under the Google.
I saw all of them, y'all. She on every single one.
Yeah, that's a lie. I didn't know too many of those other places. I'm going to be remembering them, though. This is the second time that I feel bad for that.
But that's the importance of having those tools in your toolbox where you do have people, would you have your book available on those different distribution outlets, because that it is important. And you didn't say the main one that's the most important to me. What's your website? Did you say your website?
I'm still missing. I'm still building on that.
That's the main one.
I'm still building. It's up under the Google. It's up under the Google when you look me up now. I'm still trying to help build it.
Yeah, exactly. And I tell people this: it's great to have those other outlets and those tools. Those are tools that you want to have in your toolbox. But Jeff Bezos got enough money. Walmart got enough money. All of them. I'll tell all of them got enough money. We trying to put money in your pockets. In your pockets. And it comes directly to you to be able to buy the books. And here's the thing too. You go to the supermarket and you go in there to buy one thing, right? But then you wind up, I do kind of need this, and I kind of want to get that. It's the same way they go to your website, because you'll have more than just your books on your website. You're like, oh, I didn't know she had written 2 other books or 3 other books. Well, let me get that. Get that book too. So that's the importance of having your website, so that people can go. Like the other ones, the Walmarts and the Goodreads and Amazon, those are great. Those are good, the tools to have, because you never know where you are. You know what I'm saying? But when you have, you don't have to share any of the income that comes off of your website. That's your money. That's your money.
Yes.
Else, and I know everybody else, you got to share the money with that.
They be able to hand in the cookie jar.
They gonna get their cut. So you definitely want to make sure of that. Kristen, what did I tell you? I told you this hour was going to go by real fast, didn't I? You
did, Dr. Leroy. You sure did.
Go by really fast.
And it has really actually been a pleasure. So, and thank you for having me on.
No,
I greatly appreciate it.
It has been a pleasure. And as I say, with the author showcase, and I was telling you before we came on, that this is it gives authors the opportunity to be able to have a platform that they might not readily have. And that's what the editor-in-chief, Brother David Murphy, who owns National Black Unity News, when he and I talked about doing this for authors, we wanted to be able to give a platform to authors, to specifically Black authors, because as you know, a lot of us, we don't have a lot of these platforms. We don't get the opportunity to be able to talk about more than just our books. And when you talk about, our books, our stories, you may get a 5-minute piece that you can put in. You really don't get in depth like we talked about here, where we talked about a major thing because we wanted to give the audience a just more than just the book. We wanted to give them beyond what that book is, so that when they go to buy. When they go to buy Miss Crystal's book, can y'all see that right there? When y'all go to buy her book right there in the latest issue. And did you get your newspaper yet? You should get your newspapers.
I just got it yesterday. Yesterday they did come. I got it. Matter of fact, here it is right here.
Oh, see, she got
it. I got it.
I gotta get a picture of us. I'm gonna take a picture of us. So don't let me.
I know. Look, it was raining right the other day, so now I got family a nice scenery, Dr. Leroy, so I can show out. You heard me?
So that's that was our mission and our goal, was to give authors this platform to be able to talk about their mission, their message, the motivation, the movements, all of those things that they might not readily be able to talk about. And the newspaper is more than just the author showcase. It's so much more in there. The articles, I promise you, the articles that are written by the other editors in the newspaper, you're not going to read about everywhere else. These are some of the stories from all over the country, but even all across the globe too, because it's not just a national newspaper, it's an international newspaper that touches people in the UK, that touches people in Africa, all over. So in the diaspora, down in the islands. So you want to make sure that you get your subscription too. You can go to www.tnbun.com. You can subscribe to the newspaper. We want you to subscribe to the newspaper. It's a quarterly newspaper, so it's only 4 times a year. But and I promise you, it's less than a dinner that you will go spend out, and you can get this delivered right to your to your home, right there. You can read the great articles. You can get the great information about authors such as Crystal, and then you can go over to our YouTube channel and watch other interviews like this that have some of the other authors that talk about who they are, their books, and all of those great things that are about them. These are just conversations that we have to give y'all a little bit of information about who they are and just the wonderful people. And of course, I say this all the time. Every interview that I've done for the author showcase, always learn something new. There's always something that you all as authors bring to me that I get to learn and everything like that. Like I told you, with you writing the way that you wrote from the narrative of a therapist to be able to deal with this character that comes in, I'm just like, wow, that is really dynamic. It made me think of the movie Antoine Fisher. That's what that
Antoine Fisher. Okay, Antoine. Yes.
Here's this young boy. He's trying to deal with what he was dealing with, and he stumbles onto this therapist that walks him through dealing with life. As I was talking about that, it made me think about that movie. So yeah, it's phenomenal. So thank you. One more time, can you give your contact information one more time so that people can know where they can go and purchase the book and also connect with you?
At Dorrance Publishing, my publishers at Amazon, Goodreads, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, and just Google me. And then it's at Crystal 112184 on Twitter, and then Crystal_Ann_Mitchell on Instagram, and then the Crystal Ann Mitchell, which you can Google that, and I should pop up with my Facebook page of my author page. And I'm still building on my website. I'm gonna have it done by this year. I'm gonna have that done.
There you go. Put it on that list. That's your third or fourth quarter assignment is to have that website. Yes. Yeah, Crystal, this has been absolutely a joy. I thank you for sharing your story. I thank you for being obedient to God and sharing your story.
Thank you.
So that other people can share theirs or tell theirs or live theirs. You give them through this the ability to be able to go through their story, whatever that story may be. The thing that they do.
But thank you, Dr. Leroy. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. So check out the latest issue of the National Black Unity News with Miss Crystal Ann Mitchell. Y'all can check it out. She's in there. We'll have another showcase coming up, you all, and another issue coming out in July. But for right now, you can get your subscription, www.tnbun. It's Dr. Leroy McKenzie Jr., the Impact Builder, and we'll talk to you all next time.